Hi, I'm Elizabeth Noyce, and you're listening to Supergirl Radio.
I think the CW are just trying to win the time slot war with Supergirl Radio.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because her outfit.
She looks like a boss in this coat.
Is Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. It's so fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Welcome to Supergirl Radio, your source for all things related to the CW Supergirl TV series and the character of Kara Zor-El. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and since my usual co-host Morgan is currently enjoying her honeymoon after recently getting married, I am joined by Tyler Patrick, who is the host of a Krypton Report, the All Things Kryptonian Podcast, to discuss and review the Supergirl Season 6 episode titled Dreamweaver. Welcome to Supergirl Radio, Tyler. Thank you for being with me for this episode.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm glad to be here. It's always awesome to talk to other people who podcast and talk about these things almost religiously, because then you feel like I'm not alone. And it's just, it's nice to be a part of. Like, it's cool to bring a new voice and hear someone else's opinion. Plus, I listen to your show, so it's like, your show's one of those shows where like you're listening to it and you're like, oh, yes. Like you're like, wait, I'm talking out loud to people who can't hear me. Now I get to talk out loud and you hear me. So it's cool to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're always looking for new voices on the podcast and meeting other Superman, Supergirl fans. And clearly, given your background in your video, you are definitely a Superman, Supergirl fan. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts about the show. But before we get talking about this week's episode of Supergirl, here at Supergirl Radio, we like to ask people when they first come on to Supergirl Radio, where they met the character of Supergirl. So do you remember the first time you ever heard or saw the character of Supergirl?
I do. And it's really interesting because I just remember being at my grandma's house and my cousin was watching Supergirl, the movie. And I can't tell you what part it was. I just remember seeing her fly and then seeing her land and thinking, oh, there's a Supergirl. And I had to be, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe. And that kind of stayed with me. And of course, I never saw the movie for the longest time because I couldn't find it to rent or whatever. And then, of course, when the animated series came about, you had Supergirl in there. And that really helped cement it, because I did have like a couple of comics that had the protoplasm Supergirl.
Yes.
That I didn't quite understand exactly what and who it was at the time.
It is confusing.
So it was really weird. But then, as your comic reading grows, you learn. But I think what really helped was just reading back stuff and then, learning. And, we didn't have these fancy things like the internet and all this. And it's so crazy to talk about, like, you find old comics. And then I felt like I really got to know Kara more as the Jeff Loeb run came about, where, they reintroduced it. It was they made the film version of Batman, Superman, Apocalypse. I was like, this is more like what, then going back over time. And then we had, Smallville, the series that introduced a version. And I have a quick question for you. Okay. Real quick. Is it Kara or Kara?
It depends on what you're watching. So Supergirl, the movie, is Kara. Superman, the animated series, is Kara. Smallville is Kara. Supergirl, the TV series on the CW, is Kara. I'm trying to think of some of the other different variations, but it just depends on which one you're watching. So do you have a preference?
I don't. it's weird because I've used them interchangeably, but then of course when I'm reviewing the show, it's Kara, and then if I'm talking about the performance on Smallville, it's Kara.
Yeah, I do that too.
It's just one of those things where you're like, it's the pronunciation. Hi everybody, since I can't comment on the things. But, yeah, it's just one of those things that makes me kind of stand out and be like, what's personal? Because there's some words that people pronounce like, for example, Wonder Woman's mom is Hippolyta.
Right.
But I've heard people say Hippolyta.
I've heard that too.
It's one of those that I'm like, but I understand. Like, it's the pronunciation and like, it's not wrong. But to me, it's one of those like, but the Kara thing is just kind of personal, interchangeable.
Yeah, I go with whatever. If I'm talking about Smallville, I'll call her Kara. If I'm talking about Supergirl, the movie, I'll call her Kara. So I try to stick with the pronunciation that they give in whatever I'm talking about. So that's my approach to it. But you can call her whatever you feel like it, I guess. So thank you for sharing your history with Supergirl. So that's really cool that Helen Slater was my first Supergirl too. So it's good to know somebody else who connected with that movie as a youngster. All right. Well, we do have some news to talk about this week. So I guess we should go ahead and get to the news. All right. DC Fandom is actually going to be returning this year. We're going to get another round of DC Fandom. It originally started in the year of the pandemic, 2020. I guess we're still kind of in it. DC Fandom came out of the pandemic, so it's going to be coming back this year. But unlike last year, unlike the first time around, it's only going to be for one day. Of course, they said that in 2020 and then it became 2 days. But for right now, let's go with this news. DC Fandom will be returning this year for one day only on October 16th, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, where DC Comics will showcase its biggest movies, games, shows, comics, and more. As far as DC TV goes, Warner Brothers Television will offer a look at new seasons of Batwoman, The Flash, Superman and Lois, and Sweet Tooth, and will include a farewell tribute to Supergirl as it approaches its epic conclusion after 6 seasons. It will also have a celebration of 100 episodes of DC's Legends of Tomorrow, a first look at forthcoming new drama Naomi, and a sneak peek at an upcoming episode of DC's Stargirl. So what do you think about DC Fandom coming back, Tyler? Did you get to experience it the first time around?
I took the day off. The mother-in-law took the kids, and I basically just sat in my Superman outfit and hung out in the living room all day with my wife while I, messaged people and everything. What I really love about Fandom is it is online, it's streaming, and it just felt like this giant collection where all DC fans got together.
Yeah.
And we're sharing things and talking together, retweeting, messaging, whatever. Like, it was like this global connection that we are all sharing at the same time. And you don't get that a lot in cons and stuff because you can't always go to the con or you're not there. And this just felt like something special for us. And I think that it's something great that DC should do every year going forward.
Right.
I do think it should be 2 days. And it should be a mixture. Like last time they did like all the film and movie and TV stuff one day, and then they spread out another month and did all the comic stuff. And it felt like the hype for the comics one went down.
Yeah.
I really think they should have it as a weekend and have everything intermingled. Kind of like most cons are 2-day events, that way, because I find a lot of the panels of the comics, fascinating. I think more people might too. Good one, Paula. Good one, Paula B. I love it. If you did something like that, so.
Yeah, I agree. I think it should, if they're going to do it multiple days, they should do it, like a Saturday and Sunday or something like that. Because I think this time around, it's only going to be 4 hours long is something that I read.
I was thinking it was like 1 to 6, but I don't know. With time zone stuff, sometimes I get confused.
Which is much shorter than the first time around. They did end up doing 2 days. And then the first time around, I think it was like a 12-hour thing, if I remember correctly, because it looped back and went around. Yep. So it seems to be like it's going to be much shorter this time, which is a little disappointing for me. And also, there's not going to be any interactive things. I enjoyed the second DC Fandom Day than the first one, just because you could do all these fun things like learn how to draw characters and play games and try to get out of that Joker escape room, which I failed every time.
That's why I think it'd be great to just keep it alive and mingle the 2 days and activities together. It is interesting how the poster, like I was talking with someone, a lot of people didn't like the poster. And like I said, is what's interesting is everyone in the poster is like the current now of the character, or it's like what's happening at this moment. So, even characters like Harley, the next big Harley thing is going to be in the video game. So that's the Harley that's represented. It's kind of like what they're trying to sell, quote unquote, but like it's the what's now, what's new versions of the characters.
Yeah. And I think we as fans, we have to remember that as much fun as this is for us, this is for DC. This is a marketing tool. This is this is a way to sell their products and the things that they're doing. So when they do posters like that, that is what they're thinking about. They are thinking about what can we promote next. But it is good for Supergirl fans. We are going to get some kind of farewell to Supergirl, and I think I also read that Melissa Benoist would be connected to it. So I don't know if she's hosting it or she's going to be in it. I don't know, but it seems like she's going to be part of it. So that's very exciting for me personally, because I've felt like it, and I think most Supergirl fans feel like this, that the CW has not done a great job of making the final season of Supergirl a momentous occasion, a very big deal. So at least with DC Fandom, we're getting something like that.
It just feels like with the pandemic and stuff, like the way everything got shuffled, and it just feels like so much stuff kind of was like here and then kind of wavered. The Superman and Lois, I felt like had just such a hype train, and then with the breaks and the stops and the way it kind of kept doing this, because the stops really, I think, affected the way that show works more than anybody else.
Yeah, and that's something that they really couldn't help. They did have to, stop production because of a COVID-19 situation. So unfortunately, that was a thing that did happen. But yeah, I mean, if you don't have that momentum, it's hard to catch up on that. And I think that's why DC Fandom is such a big deal for DC and Warner Brothers.
And I'm hoping that Supergirl, because it's all done, wrapped filming, that it'll just be a continual go. There won't have any breaks, because I think that'll help just keep the energy of the show going. And it's so weird just because, it's September today. At this time, usually we're prepping to say all the shows are coming back next month. But we've had just constant continuation where we really haven't had a time where everything's gone.
Yeah.
It's been weird.
Yeah, I know for Legends of Tomorrow fans, that's kind of weird. It's just kind of run into the next season, basically. So that is so strange, but that's the world we live in now. Andy points out that on DC's website, it says the main event video will stream live on October 16th at 10 a.m. Pacific time and run approximately 4 hours. Yeah, so much shorter than the first DC Fandom. But I agree with you, Tyler, that I think DC should do it every year. And I think it should be an annual event, because I also agree that it is nice to be able to have that experience with other DC fans all at one time. That was kind of a special feeling, that we were all plugged into what was happening, right, what was going on, and we could all talk about it together. And that was really fun. All right. Well, I think that's all for the news that we have. So we'll have to keep. We'll come back for DC Fandom to talk about Supergirl, and I even saw Krypto the Super Dog in there. So there's going to be some sort of DC League of Super Pets. So we'll talk about Fandom in October, after October 16th. So we'll do another episode about DC Fandom. But for now, I guess let's talk about this week's episode of Supergirl, which was titled Dreamweaver. Here is the official description. Quote, Kelly meets Joey, guest star Aiden Stocks, a young orphaned alien boy who is acting out in foster care because he fears there is something wrong with his brother Orlando, guest star Jaleel Swaby. who is incarcerated. Kelly asks Kara to help her investigate, and they stumble upon abuse at the prison. Meanwhile, Nixley crashes one of Nia's dreams and asks her for help, unquote. So this episode of Supergirl was a big change for Kelly Olsen. She decided at the end of it that she wanted to become the new Guardian. So, Tyler, what did you think about Kelly's story and what she was doing, investigating this abuse in the foster care system and trying to track down what was going on with Orlando?
I loved Kelly's story in this, as far as I like that she was doing things as Kelly. I'm still wrestling with the concept of her being Guardian, because Alex had that whole line at the end about wait till your training starts. And I feel like it kind of diminishes maybe the capabilities of what these superheroes can do if everyone can just be trained up shortly. Because I like that she was doing stuff as Kelly. Like, even though she had the helmet on and was hacking on the computer to get the video footage, I really like that she was working as Kelly. She was putting herself out there as an image, and it's kind of that idea of a person, a tangible person, being the light or the inspiration for people to see someone fighting the system as themselves in the system fighting the system, kind of thing. So I really like that she took on the abuse and recognized it and took it upon herself. My question at the end was, who's now running the house? Because she just kind of like walks off and the kid walks off. I'm like,
oh,
like who's the new? Like, they didn't show them putting someone new in this house. I'm like, is that a plot thread or something that's going to develop? Because this isn't really spoil it, but like, how Alex always had the wanted to be a mom kind of thing. Like,
right?
Is this coming back around to that? Don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't think about that, but the foster care mother who did get taken out, I guess, by social services, she's gone now. So I don't know if Kelly's going to fill that role or somebody else is going to come in. But it did look like what I liked about this episode with Kelly is that she formed these bonds with these children, Joey and Esme, who is the cute little girl who was talking about justice. So she had a lot of thoughts and opinions, and I enjoyed her. So I think we might be seeing more of her. So I guess we'll have to check that out. But I really liked Kelly interact. This is one of the things that I've always wanted for Supergirl, but they gave it to Kelly. I always wanted Supergirl to have a story where she helps some kids. And I've been pitching that for years and years and years on Supergirl Radio, and they never did it. But at least I got something like this with Kelly, where she got to actually interact with citizens of National City who needed help. And I'm with you. I thought it was great that we got to see her do that as Kelly. There's only so much you can do as a superhero, as Guardian. You can protect people and shield people and save the day. But for something like that, where you're taking an abusive person out of a foster care system, that may be sometimes more important. So I hope that even with Kelly deciding to become a vigilante, costume superhero, she's not going to lose that part of herself that interacts with the everyday citizen.
My thing is, I just feel like she doesn't need to be that. Like, I really think that she's more powerful and stronger by being herself and what she's become in the social circuit than being the costumed hero. I feel like you're kind of already padded out that way on the show. I think Kelly being Kelly is much more powerful. And like you were saying, the story of Supergirl, and this is just real quick, I won't go on any kind of tangent, but
no, go on any tangent you feel like you need to.
When the show first was coming out, my co-host and I, we were starting Krypton Report. We had a whole conversation about, before we knew all the details of how the show was going to be, is like, do you do this show as Supergirl? Like, how do you do Supergirl without Superman? Like, with the lead in, do you just make her Supergirl, but give her like the Superman story where she's the one here? And I think the problem this show has always had a lot of times where they were like, we're doing Supergirl, but we're kind of just doing Superman stories or Superman things with her. And I think, like, especially with her being a reporter at Catco, and like this, like, oh, we're just kind of making her like soft Clark. And even some of the dynamic between last scene and this scene with William is almost a Lois and Clark thing, but in reverse.
Yep.
And through her supporting cast and secondary cast, they've done a lot, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, you could have done maybe Kara, like, I don't know, she could have left Catco early on or done something and maybe got into like the social services or something else. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, giving Supergirl more of the identity that's her. One thing I've always loved about this show is it's the first time they've ever done the crest symbol where they really gave Supergirl her own one to identify with. I love the way they did the gold outline with the blue. So when you see it, like, that's the Supergirl one. Like my daughter has a bunch of super shirts, okay? And some of them are pink, because they said that's Supergirl. But then she'll say she'll watch it like, but Supergirl never wears pink, Daddy.
That's not true. You should point her to the Adventures of Supergirl comics by Sterling Gates. He actually intentionally put the pink colored Supergirl supersuit in that comic so that little girls could see it. So I'll have to send you. And
I agree that's it's great. But like, I turn on the show or the movie or whatever, and that's what they see is the same, and which is fine because it's all, because I tell them, like, I have this on, it's Superman, but it's also Supergirl too. And she's like, yes, but it's kind of neat, just kind of like how every actor but Tom Welling has a Superman symbol that's slightly different. So you can be like, oh, that's the George Reeves. Right. That's the Brendan Routh. That's the Henry Cavill symbol. Now we have one like that's the Supergirl Melissa symbol. So.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. I agree with you. I wish they had done some different things with Kara in terms of, not making her be a reporter. She's been in kind of reporter things in the Sterling Gates run, and in the comics, kind of in the 70s, 80s era, she worked at a news station, but she was a camera operator. So they could have done that. That would have been a little bit different from Clark Kent. So I agree with you there. And we've struggled some on Supergirl Radio about the idea of, does everybody need to be a superhero on this show? Because it's now everybody is, except for Lena, and Lena could put on, the Lexo suit if she wanted to.
Right.
So she could be one too.
And that's kind of like circling back around to Kelly. That's my point, is not everybody has to be a superhero vigilante out in a costume fighting. Some people are more equipped to do so. And I got more comments on that we'll talk about as we get into the show more.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting conversation to be had, especially with the Olsons, because one of the things that I liked about James when he was on the show was, and this is why I sort of pushed back against him becoming Guardian, was because I felt like the Olsons are supposed to be those, the regular human, everyday man and woman who are, representative of humanity and Earth, and the reason why the superheroes should fight and save people. And so I always liked that about James, and even here in this episode about Kelly, that they sort of represented those people who could do great things and save people, but didn't have to have a super suit. Right. So there's that line.
James's friendship to Clark is also like another example of him being grounded.
Right.
It's another touchstone for him to Earth, not just Lois, but like his earthly friends who aren't superheroes.
Yeah, and I guess most of Kara's friends are superheroes, and that's a little bit. I guess William is sort of on the outskirts, which is nice.
He's multiverse Doomsday. We all know this.
Well, this is true. He was. I
always joke I'm like, maybe they're saving it, and that's how that's how the series is going to end. William all of a sudden just Doomsday is out, and it's Supergirl versus Doomsday.
I mean, I think it'd be awesome. I think
if they did that, I swear I'd just be sitting there like, I would go completely silent. Just,
it would be a great twist by the end of the season if they did that. We did have a couple of comments from the chat that I'll get to real quick. Paula says Esme is keeping a tight control in that household. She sure was. She bossed everybody around in that place. Loved it. Electra WWF asks, what if Alex and Kelly start running the house? Maybe they do. I don't know.
I think it's a great, thinking that this is the end, and we all have our theories of how Kara's story is going to end. I think this would be a great place to put Kelly and Alex.
Yeah.
Because Alex is already in that transition. I mean, we've lost the DEO. They're kind of transitioning out. It'd be a great place for her to get her dream, feel that arc of her wanting to be a mom and serve, people and still stand for something and give her a new kind of chapter, new adventure in life. So.
Yeah, that would be great if they had something like Kara, at least with Catco, she has something outside of Supergirl. So it would be nice for Alex and Kelly to have something like that they can contribute outside of their superheroing, and while also still helping people in the community. So I think it's a possibility. We'll see what happens. That'd probably be a lot of responsibility, though. I don't know if they could run a house full of kids while they're doing their superhero stuff.
And that makes me wonder if she'll continue or if she'll kind of like set it down, lay down the mantle.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know what I'm saying? And like that could be, I know you don't like to talk spoilers.
Yeah, no, if you know spoilers.
Well, you talked about like she's in the upcoming Flash.
Oh, yeah, no, we did talk about that news. Yeah.
Okay, so about to say you did touch on that.
Yeah.
So maybe like she lays down at the end of this, like she lays down Sentinel, but then, it's kind of that picks it back up to go help Barry kind of thing.
Yeah, they could.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of like that arc is like hers. Like, okay, there's something so big that I have to return to help out, kind of thing.
Yeah, that could be interesting. And one of my first thoughts when I saw Kelly interacting with these children, Tyler, I don't know if you know about Guardian's comic book history at all. Do you know? Little bits. So Guardian in the comics has a group of newsy kids who assist him when he's out doing his Guardian thing called the Newsboys, the Newsboy Legion. And so I love Guardian and the Newsboy Legion. And since we now have a new Guardian, we joke on Supergirl Radio that she needs a News Gal Legion. And so I think these kids in this house could become her News Gal Legion. They don't have to do anything dangerous. They just have to, ride around on their bikes and, throw newspapers at people. Yeah, they could just be informants. I mean, it's right there for the taking. I don't know why, why they refuse to do it.
And the thing is, like, I have to keep reminding myself, like, the show is back, but this is what, episode 9 of 20 some episodes. So we still have the majority of this season to go. Like, it's the season's just getting started. It's not coming to the close right now. So there's a lot that now that like Kara is back, it's like the show's reinvigorated and really going forward. So
yeah, we're not even halfway as of yet, which is nice. We've still got some story to go. So I don't know. I'm not getting my hopes up about the News Gal Legion, but man, it's right there. All they have to do is pull the trigger. I mean, it's just right there. So I did like what they did with Kelly in this one. I thought she had a really good story arc. I liked her interacting with Kara. She got to go investigate with Kara, and she was a character on her own. She wasn't just Alex's girlfriend, which I liked. She actually got to do her own thing and have her own story, and that's really important on a show where there's so many characters. All right. So some other things that were happening in this episode. I guess I kind of mentioned Kara a little bit. So Tyler, what did you think about Kara's investigation into the prison system? She met with the warden and she had to figure out what was going on with the prisoners and their connection to Intergang. So Tyler, what did you think about Kara's investigation and what they discovered there?
I liked it because I liked her seeing back into getting involved in something and getting back into the community and getting back into her work. And then, having that pushback with Andrea that we'll get into. But I was surprised, like when she was talking to the warden, like she didn't use her super hearing to kind of like listen for the heartbeat. Cause he seemed like, he was saying things and it's kind of like, is he telling the truth? Like, we had that great setup where she heat visions the coffee cup and then on the computer and then gets in there. And I liked seeing that angle, like what her superpowers give her for investigating and the prison system and what was going on. Because I do like that leads back to Intergang. That hasn't really been touched on. It's one of those Superman, Metropolis, big villain type, people that we've kind of So.
Yeah, so they did mention Inner Gang and Bruno Mannheim. Andy says I really was expecting Bruno Mannheim to show up with all the mentions. Maybe he will on down the line. That would be awesome, in my opinion. Just because that we don't get as many comic book references anymore on the show, which is
I feel like it was
unfortunate.
The first Inner Gang mention. I feel like it's the first Bruno Mannheim I know for sure.
That's not true. I'm gonna have to correct you on that. Just because post-crisis. Yes. Yes. Post-crisis. So the first time I think that I knew of, I tried to look that up today, was in American Alien, which was the season 4 premiere. And Lena talks about Bruno Mannheim and doing that. They were kind of doing that deal to get James cleared of any charges. So there has been a Bruno Mannheim reference before, but we've never seen him. We don't know if he is actually there or if Inner Gang is just kind of that bad guy in the background, which it seems like right now they are. But yeah, so Claudia does have a question about this. We learned Inner Gang is trying to build a dirty bomb. Is Inner Gang the big bad for season 6B? Do we know why they want that bomb? So Tyler, do you think though, since we have heard of Bruno Mannheim and Inner Gang, do you see that becoming a thing later on down the line?
I do. I mean, I feel like we're at the end of season 6. They knew going in, like, this is the end. So this is they should pull. Nope, don't pull any punches, kind of things. I think it's going to be a combination of whatever they got going on with Nixley and Bruno Mannheim. Because I do like a lot of times when the superheroes kind of fight street level villains, even though, Inner Gang is not always exactly street, but they kind of toe that bar. So I think it would be cool because it's always been one of those things I've kind of wondered, like, there's never talk really about Inner Gang. And the whole, with this show more than any, the post-crisis stuff seems like it's been harder to keep track of what Supergirl's changed, not had, not done, or anything compared to like the other shows. Because like the Flash, they talk about like, oh, we're post-crisis like all the time. Like they're like, they'll mention crisis, but some of the other shows have kind of been like,
yeah. Supergirl, in my opinion, got hit by and suffered the most consequences from Crisis. And it was so hard, especially those first couple of episodes after Crisis. It was like, wait, what is happening? What is the story now? Because they completely like changed William's backstory and all this stuff changed, and it's very, very confusing. So hopefully if they do move forward with Inner Gang, it will make sense no matter if we're pre or post crisis. Andy does say he looked up Inner Gang on the Arrowverse wiki, and they have said it a lot, said Inner Gang a lot on Earth 1, Earth 38, and Earth Prime. So no matter if you are pre or post crisis, they have mentioned Inner Gang several times. Let's see. Yeah, so we did answer that question about Inner Gang and whether or not it came up before. Let's see. I did see another question somewhere. Claudia did mention the actor who played the Warden wasn't the best actor. She does ask, is he a Superverse alumni from a movie or another show? That's the only reason I can think of why he got that role. No, I didn't think he was that bad.
They're just running out of actors in Canada that haven't already been on these shows. So like, there's so many of them. They're like, we can't keep reusing the same people for the shows because they'll be like, wasn't that guy on this show as this? Aren't they all connected? We need some. Hey, you on the street, come here, read these lines.
Yeah, I think I read that the young actor who played Joey was actually on Arrow as young Connor Hawk, I think, if I remember correctly, seeing that on Twitter. So they're reusing those actors, and the actor did sound very Canadian. I think I heard an oot out there. So it is possible they are just digging through those actors because
that's why you see the same actors come up on all the CW shows. Because one of our favorite games is watching a CW show, like, hey, they were on Smallville. They were on Supernatural.
Well, the Canadian acting industry needs to be employed. So I'm glad the Arrowverse and the DC TV shows can provide. Paula also says, speaking of Arrowverse alumni, the voice of the Owl was the same actress that played Sam Arias' mother. Young Joy was Connor Hawk on Arrow. So yeah, so we did get a return from Betty Buckley as the Owl in this episode. We'll definitely be talking about Nixley and Nia. So I guess maybe that's a good segue into that. So we did see. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I do like William. At first, he was a character I was kind of like, but I like what they've done with him, and I do like that he doesn't know Kara's secret yet or that whole story. I do hope they kind of, if they're going to continue to keep him around and kind of give Kara some work pressure and problems with him, and especially if we get into like how Andrea is just over the top now, like we
can get there. I guess since we're talking about Kara and then talking about William, what kind of shocked me was so Andrea is a kind of writing them for the Super Friends story she wants to get. She wants to get interviews with the Super Friends. And so by the end of the episode, William interviews Supergirl, which is great, but I didn't know that William Day was a TV reporter. I thought he was like a writer. I thought he was like an editorial person, like a journalist for a newspaper or a magazine. Catco sort of fluctuates between being a newspaper and a magazine. So when I saw him as a TV reporter, I was like, what is Catco? I don't understand what they do.
And that goes back to, like, in my notes I wrote down, like, because when Andrea came over, all her thing was about getting clicks, getting traffic, building all this hype, and it wasn't really about, the whole thing was they weren't hard hitting journalists anymore. Like, the news was kind of dropping. It was more of all the other pizzazz, just attention, whatever. And now she's talking about being hard journalism, like we are a news source. And then I'm like, aren't you a magazine, like a monthly magazine?
Yeah.
So because she tells William he'll be writing classifieds and obits.
That's a newspaper.
And I'm like, that you're not a newspaper.
They do this all the time. It's so frustrating.
And I worked at a small town newspaper as a reporter for a little while and stuff. And I'm just sitting there like, you're a magazine, like you do the big stories. And that was kind of a different angle than being the newspaper report. But then you're talking like, yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be Catco Media, but it's kind of one of those things like it was owned by Elcor, now it's owned by Andre, and then we had Post Crisis, and a lot of that stuff kind of just went away. And then here she is talking about we're the number 8, now we're the number 3, and it's like, okay.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just weird because it feels like her character went from I don't care about the news to all of a sudden now like I'm obsessed with the news, and so
yeah. What gets me is that if you are a media empire, like Paula points out, you're gonna have specific journalists who do the writing. That's gonna be their job. They do that. Then you're going to have the TV reporters where they go out and get interviews and cover the news out in the field. So you're not going to normally, I mean, if they were a small town operation like the newspaper on Superman and Lois, I would understand it. If there were only like 2 people there, they would be writing the articles and doing the TV reporting. I get that because you have a small staff. But if you're a Catco worldwide media and you're this big media empire, you're going to have people doing all of that. You don't need to have William do TV reporting and newspaper writing. I don't understand that. So I was just laughing about him.
I'm surprised he had a full camera and it wasn't one of those where like William's going live with like his like Catco phone hooked to their social media and he's holding I'm live with Supergirl. Like,
yeah,
I found her on the side. Like, Supergirl, can I get a quote from you? You know?
Yeah, no. Catco Worldwide Media provides the highest quality of equipment. Leslie does point out that Catco prints the National City Tribune, which is true, but it's just very confusing as to what they all work for. Is Kara just like anything that Andrea needs her to be? Is Kara both like writing for the Tribune? Is she also doing the magazine? Is she sometimes on the news? Like, well, I don't understand what their job description is, but I guess that is.
They just create a story and then Andrea decides where she wants to put it as an outlet.
Yeah, I guess so.
Is it something for the TV, or is it something for was published on the website immediately? Let's put it in the magazine. It's like whatever they decide it to be.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on the situation. Donna does point out Kat did several TV broadcasts, and also Kara's interview with Dreamer was a TV interview. Yeah, I guess I used to work in news. I used to work in local TV news, and so it's just
Look
weird.
Newspaper, TV.
Yeah, I mean, we could start a news business together. I think we'd probably do a pretty good job. But the idea of like the reporters would have multiple jobs like that is crazy to me, because their jobs are so busy anyway. Because you're not just doing that interview on the news, 6 o'clock hit and you're done. You're editing packages. You're doing research. You're reporting in to your producers and doing all this stuff. So
you got contacts at the CIA.
Yeah, of course you've got deep pools to get information. So it's a lot. So it's just kind of like it's somebody who used to work in local TV news. It's funny to me to see that kind of stuff. So Andrea, she is really, Catco, good for them though. They are climbing up the charts. They were number 8 last week. They're number 3 now. So I don't know if next week, if they're going to climb the charts again. Andrea is very concerned about where they are on the media.
They're going to hit number 2 and stop.
They're going to be right there.
Because number 1's the Daily Planet. If you look
true.
Last week at real quick when they show, like I was like looking, number 1's the Daily Planet.
As it should be, I think. And unless Catco was run by Cat Grant, then I would kind of be pulling forward to be the Daily Planet just to stick it to Perry. But yeah, so I think that's something to monitor how Catco progresses as they continue on. Okay, so let's talk about one of the employees at Catco who fell asleep during her meeting with Andrea. Nia met somebody this week that she apparently didn't know, but in last week's cliffhanger ending, she did know Nixley's name, but then in this episode, she didn't know Nixley. So I don't know what is happening there.
I think it's the editing flub.
And it also may just be that she was. I think that was just trying to show what she was having dreams with Nixley in them. So maybe it's kind of we don't know when that was taking place. I don't know.
Sometimes I think like they'll film parts and they're like, oh, we're going to just tack this onto this episode because it's all done, and then they don't think about that kind of thing.
Yeah, it could have been something where they needed a cliffhanger ending. They didn't have one. And so they just kind of went back and did that. So yeah, I think it definitely could have been like that. So Tyler, what did you think about getting to see inside of Nia's dreams and her interactions with Nixley?
First, I want to say one thing real quick about Nia. The thing about like with Nia's character is she's one of those characters I feel like that they brought in as a side character. They really served a purpose in the story. And then they were like, we don't know what to do with her. So she kept kind of getting shuffled to the side. And it's one of those characters that people like, but then the writers don't know what to do with. And in some ways, you're kind of like, it would probably be better to take the character off the show. But you can't always do that with actors and their schedules if you want to bring them back. So they kind of try to find something for them to do. And I feel like we're finally getting to a point where Nia's coming back around with actually having a story and something for her to do. Because I feel like for a while, she's just kind of been stagnant. I mean, there was episodes where she didn't do anything, but maybe just show up. And I was kind of like, why is she still here? And I'm not saying I don't like the character. There's so many shows that, just real quick, like Arrow. Everybody loved John Barrowman on Arrow. But there were times where I'm like, they don't know what to do with him. They just keep bringing him back for no reason. So to say that I like what I thought about with this whole Nia and the dream thing was, if you think about it, I don't think that Nixley is trapped in the dreams like she says she is, because it always seemed like Nia was having a dream, then Nixley interjected, like she just popped in and shot herself in. And thinking about how they escaped, she was on the vehicle leaving the Phantom Zone. I think it's something she's doing to just get inside Nia's head to take Nia down or something else. I think the whole her escaping with Nia's help is false.
Oh, so you think this is just a cover for her to do something else? Interesting.
Every time they presented the dream, you saw, Nia's mom and everything was good. Then all of a sudden it was like Nixley was there. as if she wasn't already there. She had to appear. So
right. No, that's a good point. That is a really, really good point. And I thought it was interesting though that imps could, fifth dimensional imps could do that, which it makes sense. I mean, fifth dimensional imps. We talked about Mixes Pitalik a couple of episodes ago on Supergirl Radio, and he's a really powerful character. So Nixley is very dangerous in what she can do. So I was a little disappointed. I knew it was going to happen, but I was disappointed that Nia made the deal with Nixley. I figured it would probably happen, but it's a dumb decision.
It felt like, I don't know if I missed something like watching it, but it just felt like abrupt. Like all of a sudden she was like, I'll do it. And I was kind of like, okay. I mean, I was a little upset that this episode's named Dreamweaver and the song never showed up.
But
I just felt like, this episode was, Nia's stuff was so much like a pocket of the episode. That's kind of like looking at it from a production point of view of knowing like COVID protocol type stuff, like how there's only like 2 actors and stuff, but it just felt like very like, I don't feel like I don't know, like if maybe like Nia didn't make the deal to like the next episode, like kind of like Nixley kind of keeps coercing her, kind of like the way Nixley kind of was working on Kara when they were in the Phantom Zone. It just felt very abrupt that she agreed to help her. But it seems like the theme of this season or the back half or whatever is reuniting with parents. I know last time you talked about with Lena's mom, and like Lena wasn't in this episode, and they talked about she was going to find more about her family, her mom's side of the family. So that seems the theme. Like Kara found her father. Now, this Mia's thing has been about her. So I'm wondering if there's going to be something, maybe there's going to be kind of another episode. It's very Faustian with Nixley, with John about his daughters, or, reuniting with family that you thought you lost or whatever. So we'll see, but Nia's part in this episode just felt very off. Like it also felt they only had like so much footage, so they just kept reusing it to fill time or whatever. So
they did do a good job editing, I will say, just because I know how much work that is, because I do video editing every day. That's one of the things that I do every day, and I've been doing for a long time. And so all those quick cuts and things like that. I mean, you have to manually put all those little pieces of video in there, and so it takes a very long time. So I appreciate the effort that went into reusing those shots to flash back to some things. So one of the things I thought was kind of foolish on Nia's behalf is that she obviously knew that the Nixley thing, the deal, was happening, and she would go back into, I guess, the real world, for a lack of a better time, outside of the dream realm, and she never mentioned it to anybody. Brainy was off at Argo.
It all felt like it was one day for her, because she went home on sick leave, and if you like look at the clothes that people wear, it's all like in one day, but it's not, because we do know we have Kelly at night and with the video, and then the next day, but there's just certain parts where it looks the way the Nia stuff is shaped, because Andrea sent her home on a mental health day, but we didn't see her return to the office the next day, because there's like next days, kind of or whatever. So it just kind of feels like maybe I mean, I always, it could be a production thing, like they rearranged some stuff in the episode, but it kind of felt like, because she always went to the same place in the same outfit in her dream, and we had not really seen that before with her dream abilities. So I don't know.
Yeah, I was just disappointed she didn't mention it to anyone else. Like maybe if she went to Kara and she said, "Hey, Kara, there's this." See,
Paula cleared it up for me. Thank you.
There's this imp in my dream realm that wants to make a deal with me. Should I take it? Get some wise counsel when you have to make these kind of decisions. But yeah, Paula says it's all in one day, and then the end is the next day. So thank you for clearing that out. That up. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm a little disappointed. I did like the owl though that we got to see there. I kind of enjoyed that we have a talking owl on an episode of Supergirl. That goofiness made me happy. But the owl was actually trying to be a source of wisdom for her. Let's see. Nia says that owls bring to light what is in the dark, and that owls are the symbols of truth. And the owl says wise things like, the wise understand by themselves, fools follow the words of others, and wisdom lies in not seeing things, but in seeing through them. So the owl was trying to guide her in the right place. So I guess she did get some wise counsel within the dream realm. So I guess that was something that she did get. So I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if her mother is going to, because she does now, because of her deal with Nixley, she is going to reconnect and reunite with her mother for 24 hours. So I don't know if that happens within the dream realm or if that happens out in the physical world. So that's going to be really interesting to see.
I mean, I agree. And it's just kind of one of those things like, the whole fifth dimension is so interesting. Have you ever heard Grant Morrison explain how fifth dimension works?
No, but he's a wild guy. I've heard him talk about all sorts of crazy mystical things. So what does he say about it?
I'm going to sum it up because I heard him explain it. It was so simple. He said, if you take a piece of paper and you draw a straight line, and that's your time, take your 4 fingers and put them on the line. That's the fifth dimension. You're interacting with that line at one point, but your fingers are touching 4 different points of time all at once. And that's how the imps kind of work, is they can interact with multiple things at once. They're just touching it, but to us, it's hitting different points in time. And then he went on to describe it was about his New 52 Superman story and how they were, telling it. But I thought that was very interesting, of just a simplistic way of kind of understanding how in a dimensional space, these, beings, the imps or whatever, they interact with us, and how we have to process it. So
that's really interesting. I'm going to have to really consider that. A lot of things that Grant Morrison talks about, I'm always like, is that true? I'm
always like, are you really smart? Or you just make us think that you're really smart? And that's some of his writing. I'm reading. I'm like, dude, this is good, but you need an extra issue to thin this out, because some of this stuff is.
Yeah, it's high level. Grant Morrison is very high level. I don't know if that involves, lots of schooling, or if maybe he's making it up. I don't know. But yeah, so he does say a lot of high level intellectual things. Let's see. Laura says, I think this would have worked if we knew how many times Nia had this dream getting worn down. She doesn't know how to interpret dreams, but the thing she learned from her mom was to trust owls. So that could be the case. Maybe she was just tired of dealing with Nixley, and just to get rid of her, she kind of caved into the deal. So that could be the case. So I don't want to say Nia was dumb for doing it. I know why she did it, but I was disappointed that she didn't try to fight it a little more, I guess.
I agree with Paula's comment about, so far Nia has only had right here.
Has only had visions or dreams. In this episode, she's in a realm where she's hoping to find her mother. Where did that come from? I feel like there's missing scenes. That's a really good point. It seems like a next step for Nia and her powers to be able to go into a dream realm. But I guess she has. We've seen her visions before. We saw her precognition with the Catco pink cougar, so we have seen some of those things, but for her to physically be in another location like she was running through the forest, that is definitely a step up for Nia's powers. All right, well, I guess we should wrap up our discussion. Tyler, were there any other things that you wanted to talk about in regards to the episode before we get into some overall general thoughts?
No, we touched on all the main characters and kind of where they are and what they're going. I mean, there really wasn't much of John. He just kind of helped facilitate the story. I think we pretty much hit it all. I don't think.
So in that case, what did you think about this episode in terms of the quality? You know, would you watch it again? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you think?
I liked it because I really like Kelly's storyline in this. I said I'm still unsure with her being the guardian thing. I prefer Kelly being Kelly and doing it as herself, not having to go the vigilante route that some people are just quick to jump on board with. I like seeing Kara in action. The show has padded out its side characters a lot, and that's, it's nice to see Kara up front doing Supergirl things, and I like seeing her and Jean in the field together.
Yeah, it was nice to see Supergirl and Martian Manhunter doing that together. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's interesting, just as a side note, how her heat vision's still blue.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it felt like post-crisis they changed everyone's heat vision to red, because all the Kryptonians on Superman and Lois were red now, and Kara's is still blue. That's just a production thing. So
Superman and Lois just kind of they just kind of do whatever they want to do over there on Superman and Lois. Does it make sense? No. Do they care? No.
My whole thing with that show, and this is my working theory, is that this show, Superman and Lois, takes place after the events of Supergirl season 6.
That would make sense if that's the case. We'll see what happens at the end of Supergirl and see if that's the explanation we get. Because I could maybe buy that for $1, but
I don't think
right
they'll
now,
ever really say it. But that's my working theory on just how, because think about when the shows were supposed to premiere and the story and stuff. So, and I mean, I do like Kara as the blue heat vision. What my friend and I have rationalized in our brains is, since now going solar flare is such a big deal with the Kryptonians, that we think it'd be cool if they did it where it starts red, but then the more intense that you project, it turns to blue. And if you're going to go solar flare, it's blue, right? Real bright blue before it depletes, kind of mixing the two versions together.
That would make sense, because isn't blue the hottest heat?
Yep.
I want to say that. So actually, if we're going by that, Supergirl's heat vision is probably a little stronger if hers is still blue. I'm just saying.
I mean, exactly.
So before I get to some final thoughts, I'll just answer some questions. Andy says, am I lost on something, or why is Jean always wearing the Martian Manhunter suit, but he could still use his powers without being in Martian form? Yeah, that's a budgetary thing. I think I read one time that David Harewood, he loves Martian Manhunter so much that even though they can't make him the Martian, he still wants to honor the character. So that's why he's still in the suit without the Martian form. So yeah, a lot of this is just them trying to cut corners because they don't have the monies for it. Let's see.
Really bad makeup,
Yeah, I'd rather him, save it for the good CGI when he gets a big moment. Ella Rainbow 3 says blue is hotter than red, and Lita says white is hottest. So that's good to know. Maybe one day we'll get some white heat vision, and it'll be really crazy. Yeah, I thought this episode was good. I really liked Kelly's story in this, and Kelly was a character when she came on the show initially. She was real cold. I didn't know, emotionally, she's very cold. She was kind of standoffish because she had that dynamic with James that had to be, repaired. And so I didn't initially take to Kelly. But with this episode, I think Kelly really formally, I'd been kind of warming up to Kelly over the seasons, but this episode really won me over with the Kelly Olsen character, just because I liked getting to see her actually care about people for another reason than just, I have to save the day. She actually cared about these kids, and she wanted to be in their lives.
Hey, Sam.
Oh, we got a hey Tyler from the chat. So I think this episode, if anything, it did a lot to further my appreciation of the Kelly character. So I think that did its job. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for our discussion, but let's go ahead and we'll find out what our listeners had to say about Dreamweaver. So I'll get to some tweets here. At Fractal Inverter said, loved this episode. Great stories for Nia and Kelly while still letting Kara shine. Can't wait to see what happens with Esme. What's her powers? No name listed in the cast. Are they hiding a heritage from us? That's a really good question, though. At all the kids in the foster care system or in that foster care house had abilities that had to be dampened by their power dampening wrist things. So Esme does have some abilities. We don't know what they are yet, but her sassy attitude, I thought, was her superpower. So I'll be curious to see what she actually physically can do. At Patty Mello 20 says, another good episode. It's really nice to see Kara investigating things for once. Catco is relevant again, and I love that. I can't believe that Kara didn't tell the team about Nixley. Oops. Kelly being Guardian makes more sense than James ever did. Yeah, Kara never actually said, you know what, while I was in the Phantom Zone, I met this fifth dimensional imp there. I guess maybe she figures Nixley is still in the Phantom Zone. I guess that's why she hasn't said anything.
And like you said earlier, like she's really holding back from wanting to talk about the experience, talk about what happened in the Phantom Zone. So it's going to come up, but yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I hope they haven't let that go. I hope they didn't do one episode of Kara dealing with her Phantom Zone trauma and then that was it. I hope there's more to that. Kenny Crayley said, good episode for Kelly Olsen and Supergirl action. I give it a 4 out of 5. At Women IMRL said, Dreamer is a fool, all caps. So tell us what you really think. So Dreamer did make a tough decision. So we'll see what happens with Nia moving forward. At Dr. Ange 70 says, I am currently betting my life savings that Esme will be adopted by Kelly and Alex by the end of the season. I think that there's a pretty good chance of that. What do you say to that, Tyler? Do you think that little girl is going to get adopted by Alex and Kelly?
Just sitting here in this conversation, like I hope that, but at the same time, I like the idea of Kelly like taking over the house, her and Alex, and giving Alex a different beat to her story and letting Alex and her run it together kind of thing. Kelly still works, but Alex is more at home because it really changes her life has been so much about, for lack of a term, like war, fighting, protecting. And this is a new level of protection for her, a new way of protecting the people. She's now caring for children, the next generation, which she has wanted to be a mom for seasons now.
Yeah.
But I mean, if they just adopt the one child, that's cool. I mean, I'm fine with that. But I like the idea of them like, we'll take all, like bring us all the kids that nobody wants. We got this,
Yeah. And also turn them into the new Scout Legion. That would make me happy. So I would be good with all of that. And at Anthony Nia says, another good episode. Lots of screen time for Kara, and William is so much better now. He's firmly in the friend zone, but Andrea is becoming insufferable. Loved seeing Dreamer blast an owl into oblivion. That was actually, to me, that was kind of sad.
It was sad, but the power use was cool.
It was cool. But to continue on with this tweet, at Anthony Nia says, wish she would have done that to this terrible actor who was playing the warden. Man, people did not like the actor playing the warden. I did not think he was that bad, but other people are not pleased with his performance. At SL Fricky says, I'm not going to miss Kara's periodic thing of going, quote, hey guys, I'm an alien too. I know what it's like. Okay, I was adopted almost instantly by an upper middle class family and raised human and didn't have to deal with intolerance or the same obstacles, but we're the same, unquote. Yeah, Kara can identify with certain aliens to a degree, but she did have it pretty good when she was adopted because Superman helped facilitate that. So I guess that is what differentiates her from other aliens. But Supergirl can identify with them to a degree. At Valkyrie 88A says, I thought the episode was good. I'm getting tired of the whole Nia doesn't know how to interpret her dreams. The dream could be more blatant and she still ignores it. That's negligence, not misunderstanding. Yeah, I don't know. I think Nia, to a certain level, I think she did know, she at least knew what the owls meant. I think she had an indication that the owls were connected to her mother. So I think she knew some of what the dream meant. So I guess there's that. At ALDU said, loved it. The setup for Kelly wanting to be Guardian was way better than James's. Hers, I buy it. There's a real motivation behind it rather than a broken camera. This time, I'm excited about the Guardian storyline and the future dancing kid. Come on, she's getting adopted, right? Was adorable. This I thought was a better. Kelly's Guardian backstory, I think, is actually more comic book accurate to the Guardian, at least the Jim Harper Guardian comic book backstory, where she helps, he helps out this like ragtag kids of, these orphans. So that's actually very close to the Jim Harper Guardian, which I think is really interesting. Let's see. At DJ Ryder says, another solid outing with great character moments. Love seeing a healthy, supportive couple in dancing. And it was a wonderful showcase for Ozzy Tesfaye. And the little girl they introduced should absolutely be the child Alex and Kelly adopt. She's adorable. People love Esme. At Rachel Joy 23 said, asked, did they reuse the rainforest set for Nia's dreamscape? Anyway, I thought this episode was pretty good. Thought the title was more of a reference to the B plot than the A plot, but we got interesting stories for Nia and Kelly. Excited for Guardian and maybe News Gal Legion. Let's hope so, Rachel. I don't know. The dreamscape, the dream realm was very similar to the rainforest, but I assume after season 3 ended, they destroyed the rainforest set and built this new thing. So I don't know. I don't know the behind the scenes of that. And at Mark HB PWM said, Carr actually did reporting. And I see the seeds of a News Kid Legion in their foster home, in that foster home. Also, I think that Intergang and the Bomb are going to be the looming big bad for the bulk of the season. Glad the show is back. Yeah, I think it's very possible that we'll get Intergang as a big bad for the rest of the season. That would be very, very cool. All right, so we do have some emails. So the first one comes from Daryl, who wrote in to share some thoughts about this episode, saying, quote, for an episode title seemingly about Dreamer, she didn't factor into it very much. She certainly had no impact on the episode's plot. Daryl, I think Nia in this episode, I think, is supposed to further the plot of coming episodes. So I don't know that she was supposed to necessarily be connected to Kelly's plot, although you could connect them through mothers and children and things like that if you wanted to stretch it out and kind of reach for those connections. But I think Nia for this episode was being kind of the connective tissue from this episode to the next episode. Daryl goes on to say, quote, I realize Kara doesn't want to talk about her time in the Phantom Zone, but she really should have opened up about it more, and then Nia might have known about Nixley from the start. Nia woke up at the end of the last episode and said Nixley's name, yet this week has no idea who she is. I just found that confusing. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that. Daryl also asks, Kara is Catco's star reporter? Why do we hear about these articles so much more than we see her creating them? It's ridiculous that Andrea is always threatening the jobs of Catco employees like something will happen, unquote. I think it's been good to see Kara actually investigating. I wish we could have been seeing this kind of thing the whole time because it's been really neat to see her do that. And Daryl finishes up with, quote, Kelly has so much value that the writers just won't let her realize, pushing her to think her only value will come when she becomes Guardian. Kelly makes a real difference in this episode without becoming Guardian, yet at the end, she thinks that becoming Guardian is the best way she can make a difference, unquote. It was kind of hard to really understand the leap that Kelly got to that point. She did all this great work, and then I guess maybe she took little Esme's comment about the guardian angel, and maybe it made her think about protecting those kids. So I guess that's the leap I'm having to take as a viewer. But I think it could have been, her just making a difference as Kelly.
I'm just going to apply this with, I see, in the comments here and here about, Kelly as a social worker from being the clinical psychologist, and and also about Kara writing these articles. I'm just going to say 2 words. Ready? Post-crisis.
Boom. Solved it.
It all was changed up. We missed it. It was all in the history recalibration. All this stuff happened.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I agree with some of the logic, because I was thinking the same thing about like Kelly's background. like, wait, wasn't she a like? And I know just having like training, you can't just go into a job like, okay, I'm gonna do this now. Like they're like, well, now you have to pass this, do this, take this training. Like it's not like I can just be like, you know what, I'm gonna change it up. I got a degree in something. I'm just gonna go completely down a different path.
Well, you can do that at Catco though. You can be a newspaper writer and then become a TV reporter and all on the same day. So you can, if you want to do that, you can do that at Catco. Paula also points out that Nia's Dream Realm self was a direct parallel to Taylor Swift's Out of the Woods music video. And Nia is a Swiftie. So my headcanon is that she was vibing to 1989 before she went to sleep. I would buy that. I think that's a good way to look at that. It is very similar. So I would buy that for $1. All right. So our next email comes from, and pardon me if I am mispronouncing this because I think it's a Russian name. So please forgive me if I'm mispronounced, but I think it's either Ilima or Eileen. Wrote in with some thoughts about Dreamweaver. And since the email was pretty long, I've posted the entirety of this email on supergirlradio.com, and you can go there and read the whole thing there. But for the podcast, I'm just going to read some experts and respond to them here. But Ilima or Eileen says, quote, I liked the episode in general. Kara and Kelly's interactions and how they were investigating the case were great. The episode balanced comedic and dramatic moments pretty well, in my opinion. Many people found it hard to believe that the woman at Van Cole Prison didn't notice how Kara used her powers, but it was comedic relief, and I'm not nitpicking. Kara as Supergirl finally showed all her range and almost all range of her powers. The show remembered her super hearing, heat vision, flying, etc. There were some moments when Kara could have done better with her abilities, but I'm willing to close my eyes on them. For example, when perpetrators became invisible in the car and got away, Kara could have easily heard the car with her super hearing. That's probably true. She also probably could have used some super speed in some cases, but, the plot contrivance kind of calls for it sometimes that she can't use them. But the email goes on to say, quote, I think Esme has a role to play, and it's the first major plot line and device. The child is cute and witty. If I may guess her powers, maybe they are related to empathy. Oh, maybe that's the case. Maybe her powers are connected to Kelly in that way. She seemed to be very in tune with Kelly's emotions at the end of the episode and knew what Kelly did to protect children from their abusive caretaker. I'm glad that Kelly immediately noticed disturbing signs of the abuse. It shows off her empathy power, as Alex put it. The episode raised important topics that are frequently overlooked by the system. And the email finishes off with, in your podcast, I heard you say that you didn't care about the ships. But in my humble opinion, you should care about it because it's part of Kara's life. People's dismissiveness in this regard makes people overlook her character's humanity and vulnerability. Her character has always wanted to find love, and she has one. If you pay attention, it's Lena. Depriving her from this is like a punishment to her, and there is nothing empowering in this. I guess it's better to keep her alone than to force any romance, which wouldn't feel natural. And the email says, cough, William cough. And if she'd end up alone, then homophobia prevailed yet again. I implore you to consider what I wrote, unquote. Well, I definitely will consider what you wrote because you wrote in, and that's what we do here on Supergirl Radio. If you write in, we'll share your thoughts and respond to them. So thank you for taking the time to write in and sharing those thoughts. I agree that I liked the way that the show featured Supergirl in this week's episode and showcased a lot of her powers. It was nice to see that even when Supergirl's not the main character and the main story for the episode, Kara got a lot to do in terms of her abilities. So it was neat to see her get to show those off. I also liked Kelly in this episode and getting to meet Esme. The foster care storyline did a pretty good job of showing examples of power, because that's the theme of the season, power that was used in a negative way, and how Kelly could actually use power for good in the way she utilized her super friends and the way she used some of the things that she could do as Kelly. And I would be curious if this listener is a new listener to Supergirl Radio. And if so, welcome to our little community here at Supergirl Radio. We have a lot of different people who are with us, and they're all very friendly and fun. I'm only guessing that you might be a new listener, because if you had been listening for some time, you would know that my personal ship of preference is Kara and Happiness. I find that is the best of all ships because no matter what happens, I will be happy. So I'm not a fan of shipping in general because I've had very negative experiences with it. And sometimes that involves other fans that have been very unpleasant. So I do try to stay away from that. But as a podcast, Supergirl Radio tries to do our best to stick what is presented on the screen, so we can fairly judge the story they're telling and look at what the show is what they're delivering. Kara is actually my personal favorite character, and I would like nothing more than this show ending with her happy by the series finale with a really great end to the Supergirl story. That's I don't care about anything else. I just want Kara to have a great end on the show. But what that looks like, I don't know yet. We haven't gotten there. But if her story does end up being with her, being alone without a romantic relationship, I don't think that has to be a bad thing. Happiness isn't always, defined by having a romance in your life. It could be, reuniting with your family or being around your friends or pursuing some goal that you want to achieve. So it kind of depends on what your definition of happiness is, I guess. And I know Kara probably would love to have love in her life. She had really big feelings for James during season 1, and she loved Mon-El in season 2 and was devastated when he had to go away. And when he came back and he was married, that was even more devastating. But, I could actually really see a happy ending that would involve Kara being reunited with Allura and Zor-El on Argyle. Like that's how I kind of see it going. But I don't know that for sure. That's kind of what I would do. And it makes me feel better that Melissa seems to, I think she talked in an interview about how she had some input on how Kara's story would end. So I feel like Kara's ending is in good hands because Melissa has played this character for so long and cares so much about Kara. So I have good expectations if Melissa did have some input. So I hope that this explains some of where I'm coming from personally regarding ships in particular. I think if done well, romance on television can be great. It can lead to epic storytelling. But I have only actually seen one TV show do this really well. And that series featured time traveling on a magical island. So so no other show has done as well for romances for me, except for Lost. So I hope that makes sense and brings a little more clarity to what we've said on the podcast in the past. All right. Our last email comes from Irmgard, who writes, quote, I was a little bit hesitant to listen to the podcast on Welcome Back, Kara, because a person that is a Supercorp fan was going to be on. But I was going to give that person the benefit of the doubt, and it was going very well. Your guest started talking about Supercorp, which I had no problem with. And as I know, Morgan and Rebecca do not talk about shipping any couple on the podcast. That is true. Irmgard says, however, your guest decided to say that the Supergirl show was queer baiting. I watched Supergirl from the time it premiered, and I think everyone can have their opinion. But in my opinion, Supergirl has never queer baited on the show. And now I am seeing that Supergirl Radio has decided to share links about Supergirl's supposed queer baiting. To be fair, I think we should now have someone on to have their say about why Supergirl is not queer baiting. But I know if you do, that Supergirl Radio and the person will be called homophobic by the toxic Supercorp fandom. I have seen on Twitter and Instagram how toxic the Supercorp fandom can be to those not agreeing with them, or if you dare say anything negative about Lena. The actors, crew, and producers can tell you stories. I think your guest should not have let Rebecca's mistake of saying Lena and Kara be her in to have talked about Supercorp, seeing as fantasy ships are not talked about on your podcast. I always enjoy your podcast, but I must say I have misgivings about your guests, and I am sad to say they were realized. Thank you for any response. And P.S. I usually don't care about letting people know this, but I am bi, so an LGBTQ person does not believe that Supergirl is queerbaiting, unquote. Well, first off, thank you for writing in and sharing your thoughts, Irmgard. I personally won't be calling you any names, so you don't have to worry about that. Everybody's opinion is welcome here. We talk about ideas and hopefully talk more about ideas than people. So I would encourage everybody when you write in to talk more about the ideas and concepts of the show and not talk about other people. So I would encourage you to do that. And I would also encourage people not to call you names either, Irmgard, because, you have your opinions to share. Supergirl Radio aims to be a place for Supergirl fans to share their opinions, even if they are unpopular or if we disagree with them. Sometimes our opinions are unpopular, especially mine. So I totally understand that. To be frank with you, I really don't want to talk about this subject because I don't like getting into shipping or fandom drama. But since you did take the time to write in, I'll offer up a few thoughts about this. So you're right that Morgan and I don't talk about shipping very much, and we try our best to avoid it if possible. The Supercorp and queer baiting conversations came up in our previous episode on Welcome Back, Kara, because of a tweet from one of our listeners wrote in during feedback. So we were just responding to that tweet. And because it was mentioned and because I knew that topic was of something of interest to Quinn, I gave her the opportunity to respond to the tweet. Supergirl has always tried to provide a place where people can talk about what they love about the show. It's why we've had Donna on to talk about the Danvers sisters. It's why Dr. Nicole Green came on to talk about the science aspects of the show. It's why we invite the legal consultants to join us when we have questions about the law within the Supergirl universe, which is a lot of times. So, and we've had Corey on to talk about the Legion of Superheroes. It's why we had Wendy to come on to teach us about Brainiac 5. Our Supergirl Radio community is a very diverse group of people from different backgrounds and interests with a common love for Supergirl. And Quinn just happens to like Supercorp. And even if I don't personally want Kara and Lena to be a romantic couple, I wanted Quinn to be able to have the chance to talk about an aspect of the show that interests her. I thought Quinn and I had a very civil and productive dialogue about it. She and I calmly disagreed about Supercorp, and we shared our thoughts on the subject. And I really appreciate that because it is hard to find people to civilly and respectfully disagree with each other. So I really appreciated that about my conversation with Quinn. And I don't personally have a problem with people shipping as long as they treat other people with, the same respect that they would want other people to give to them. And Quinn did that for me. So I thought it was a good, respectful conversation. Personally, I have had extremely negative experiences with the Supercorp side of the Supergirl fandom. In fact, some of them called me a psychopath not too long ago because they didn't like my thoughts on young Lena watching her mom die. And the time that happened, I was actually upset about it the entire weekend. I probably shouldn't admit that. I probably should not tell those people that it upset me a great deal, and that I should be above personal attacks as old and as mature as I am. But those things still hurt my feelings. So I've had really negative experiences with that kind of behavior, but because I don't want to judge everyone who thinks that same way based on those people. I take everybody as they come. So Quinn has not treated me like that, even though she is a Supercorp fan. So I was not going to bring that baggage onto Quinn. Quinn was polite and kind as we live streamed. She even offered me, after it was over, she offered me a chance to find the Supergirl art in her background so that I could support the artist if I chose to do so. And I actually really enjoy building those bridges with other fans. And I'm glad that we were able to have Quinn on the podcast, even though I'm not a Supercorp shipper, but I really loved having Quinn on the podcast. So I would actually invite Quinn back on to talk about comics with us because I know Quinn is really into reading Supergirl comics. So we'll definitely have to have her back. And as far as the issue of queer baiting, I know it's a topic of a discussion among fans and how the show portrays Kara and Lena's friendship. There are two different viewpoints on this. The two different viewpoints are that all of this is maybe just in the eye of the beholder. What you see is what you think, or maybe the people, creating the show are intentionally trying to make it appear as if Kara and Lena have romantic feelings for each other just to keep LGBTQ fans watching. I can only speak from my point of view that I personally and just honestly get kind of frustrated by the fact that there's this idea out there that women can't just be close friends without anything sexual going on, which is something I actually brought up with Quinn in our conversation about how I would personally just rather see a strong female friendship on the show. And I can't assume the motives of the people creating the show to say one way or the other what they're doing or if they're intentionally baiting anyone. All I know is that the showrunners and Melissa Benoist have maintained that Kara and Lena are just best friends. And that's what I'm going to go with when reviewing the episodes. And if that changes, we'll discuss it. But as of right now, that's the way the people in charge and the lead actress of the show said that they are playing it. If others see more in Kara and Lena's interactions and want to engage in shipping, if they want to create art, write fanfic, and find other creative outlets around the Supercorp ship, good for them. I think that's great. We all have things about the show that we like and that we want to engage with. So I always encourage people to like what they like and find positivity in their own ways. So I don't have any problem with that. As far as including links about the queer baiting topic in the show notes of the podcast episode, that's something I do for every episode of Supergirl Radio. That is nothing new. That is not something I did any differently for that episode. I treat those links like they're footnotes in a book. If things are referenced in the conversation we have on the podcast, I make a list of the URLs to list out in case a listener would like more information. That's all I was doing with that. We had talked about that issue, and Quinn was nice enough to actually send me those links, which is nice because then I don't have to go around digging around to find them. So Quinn sent me a direct link so I could just add them in. So that's nothing different that I did for that episode than I do for any other episode of Supergirl Radio. So that's just kind of normal operating procedure. So just to close all this out, I don't see us here at Supergirl Radio doing an episode about the queer baiting topic because it's something outside of the show and more directly related to the fandom and shippery side of things. And we actually kind of try to stay out of that as much as possible and just kind of stay in our little Supergirl Radio community bubble if we can. We stick to reviewing the episodes and talking about stories and characters. And this topic in particular, I think seems to divide people. And at Supergirl Radio, we're more interested in bringing people together. So, but having said all that, thank you, Armgard, for writing in to share your perspective on this. And I also want to thank Quinn for being on the podcast with me last week to share her perspective on this issue. So I know that was a lot. I just wanted to make sure I hit all of those points that were sent in as feedback. So it was a lot. So I just wanted to get those things. So if you have any thoughts, let us know. But there are some issues I think are more divisive than others. And we try to keep it a positive, fun place here at Supergirl Radio. All right. Well, I think that's all for our feedback. So Tyler, are you interested in maybe making some snap judgments with me? Because I think we should do that. All right.
Intense feedback.
That was intense feedback. I had a lot of points I had to cover. So thank you for being patient with me and letting me do that.
I'm like, just don't talk, Tyler. Just let her keep talking. Sometimes I want to join in and talk. I'm like, nope, she's got this.
Well, but before we get to snap judgments, though, if you do have any thoughts, feel free to share them.
All I was going to say is much like you said, I think on shows we don't always have to have romantic relationships between characters. Sometimes I like to see the representation of close friends, two females who are best friends or two males who are just best friends, and showing that there are other kinds of loves. There's sisterly love, brotherly love, brothers in arms. These stories often get overlooked and pushed aside to make the romantic stories because they feel that they're stronger. But I think, I said to you before, Frozen was a great story about sisterly love. The whole TV show of Supernatural went for 15 years. It was about brotherly love, and I just, so my whole thing is, it's nice to even have characters earlier it said, I didn't like the whole Kara William thing much either, but I like the idea of Kara and William as friends that are they care about each other. They work together, but they're not a relationship. He's not a love interest. And I feel like now post-crisis, where we are now, I don't feel like that's really a thing they're doing. That's not a thing. But I like William being this friend because we often don't create healthy relationships in shows for males and females that aren't built on a romantic desire at all. It's, it's nice to see that people are friends, that you care about somebody, and it doesn't have to be more than that. I can just love you as the sister from another mother thing,
Yeah.
So I just think that we don't just have to jump to that. But people, if they want to ship characters, whatever, I'm still shipping Barry and Patty from season 2 of The Flash because I
actually like them too. I
thought the actors had way much better chemistry than Barry and Iris. But that's this comic story and everything. But it's all in good fun. You've pointed out before. At the same time that you're taking what they're giving you. You know, sometimes we can always say, well, I would do it this way, or I want this. But, you know, you're trying to look at objectively of what the show is, what they've done, and the pieces where they might go. And it's all, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just people writing shows, and, you know, you have a writing staff that turns over. And even then, like, you can listen to producers talk about when they change writing staff, stuff falls through the cracks. Things are written. A great thing I listened to was an interview with Robert Singer about how they started every couple of years shifting writers for Supernatural, and how some things they had forgotten that these writers who grew up with the show were bringing back around. And I think sometimes you develop characters or ideas that one writer who's writing an episode might have that, and then the next writer who does the next episode or whatever doesn't pick up on that, or the show, whatever, doesn't feel that out, and they just kind of keep going. And you got to remember, the show is the actors, the writers, the producers, all kind of putting things together. And if something's not, we're going to do this, it could get lost. So,
yeah, no, I think those are really good points. I know I bring up Playing House all the time, but Playing House was a TV show. It was a sitcom. It was a comedy, a half-hour comedy on USA. And it was made by two best friends in real life, these two ladies. And they're super funny, and they're super funny together. And they're I think it was the last episode they did in season 3, the last episode. And this was kind of personal to me because I'm a breast cancer survivor. But in the show, Jessica St. Clair, in real life, the actress had gone through breast cancer treatment. And so there was a storyline. They turned her character into somebody who was going through breast cancer. And there was an episode where they basically, you know, I think one of them said to the other, like, I'm glad we can still go on, you know, adventures together or whatever. And that like broke me, because I had these moments with some of my really, really good, close female friends where they came and, like, you know, stayed with me on the weekends and helped me out, and, you know, cooked for me sometimes, or just helped me when I couldn't do things. And like, that was like really powerful to me. And so I think that we don't see that stuff nearly as much. And I think they could do a better job with Cara and Lena in that regard, because, you know, so many people do ship them romantically, but I think they could, if they wanted to, make that such a really strong friendship. And it's just something that, you know, I don't personally see very often on TV. You see romances all the time on TV.
Exactly.
For me, I don't see the friendship extended enough.
And I agree. But there's storylines that they've done across these shows, especially one that came up this year in Superman and Lois that hit my family really hard. That was serious, that I loved and my wife loved, was the whole Lois and the miscarriage thing.
Oh yeah.
My wife used to do my podcast with me, but she's busy. But when that episode happened, she came back on because my wife and I have been through multiple miscarriages. And it's always something that has bothered and stayed with us. A lot of people would then have their opinions and kind of like, it's no big deal. And I really loved how they did it in the show. And they took it seriously. That was something that was great for us. Just seeing that type of storyline for a husband and wife, because, you know, not to go too far, but like one thing I loved about that show was making Superman the domestic dad.
Yeah.
Because it just so much parallels with things that have gone in my life in the past year. So, you know, that whole storyline was great, and I love that. And heard you talk about this show before that you brought up, and it's actually on my list to check out. I just don't have a lot of story time.
Playing House is so good. You'll actually love it because it's actually really funny. So yeah, definitely check it out. But I'm glad you brought up Superman and Lois in that regard, because that's a love of a husband and a wife, but also, you know, parents and a child. So you do have that different kind of example of love. And so that's really powerful, because, you know, you don't see that addressed as much. I personally
also don't see the miscarriage angle, how it affects the dad, the father, widow person. So I felt like they were really doing that in a healthy way. So
yeah, and that humanizes Clark. It makes him more like us than just Superman going around, flying and saving the day. He's dealing with emotional things just like us. And so I think that's what these characters can really do, is like help us identify and work through our own things, just like that. So I appreciate you sharing that. You didn't have to, so I really appreciate you sharing.
It's something important. I think that I've always talked about, like, it's funny to me that when I started watching Superman as a character has gone through in my life, like when I started watching Smallville, I was in high school. And I watched that show through high school, college, after college, get engaged. And then the show ends like when I graduate college and my wife and I get married a year later.
Wow.
And that's when I got the Superman tattoo done and everything. So
I guess show people your tattoo, and then Tyler was also showing me his Kryptonian.
It's my wife's name, and a message to her in Kryptonian on my arm.
That's so cool.
So that show is kind of like the things that Superman was going through, Clark, whatever. And that show was kind of like where my life was. And then now I have 2 kids. They're not teenagers, but I have 2 kids, and I'm a dad, and now Superman's back as dad and a husband, and I'm like, I connect on him with a whole new way. So
yeah, that's really cool, because at the end of Smallville, Lois and Clark have a wedding, so that must have been wild to like it literally followed your life path.
It's hilarious, like just so.
That's really cool. Well, that's very special as as Superman fan, for you to have those connections with the character. So that's really awesome. Well, I guess since we've talked about some really heavy stuff, let's make some really funny, goofy snap judgments and have a good time to wrap this up. So
sounds wonderful.
I will play a video and it will explain the instructions, and we'll make some snap judgments.
In the game of snap judgments, each person is presented with 2 options, but must only choose one. First instincts are recommended and explanations are unnecessary.
All right, so our first snap judgment comes from at Mark HBPWM. So Titans or Doom Patrol? If you had to pick between those two, what
Titans.
Would you? You said that very quickly. I would probably also say Titans. I think I enjoy Titans more, but Doom Patrol is actually very, very good.
Doom Patrol is fun because it's like a show that I have no expectations. I don't have as much of a control with the character. Titans I have more care about. It's a little bit more entertaining at times. But Superboy and Krypto are on Titans. So
yeah, and Krypto's like real Krypto. He's not just like a dog. He's like a white dog who has heat vision, which I appreciate.
I mean, Krypto melted mine and my wife's heart in a previous episode. I won't go any farther than that.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, devastating.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, Krypto is a delight on Titans. All right, so the next one from at Mark HBPWM. This one has 3 choices. So normally we do 2 choices, but so if you were to pick pork, vegetarian ravioli, or steak, which one would you pick?
Vegetarian ravioli.
Oh, interesting. Do you know what's in a vegetarian ravioli? What's usually in there?
Sometimes it's spinach.
Okay.
The ones that I eat is spinach usually. So yeah, that's what I would go for.
Do they have mushrooms usually?
Some of them I've seen mushrooms. Some of them are just cheese. But I always go for the spinach ravioli.
If it doesn't have mushrooms, the vegetarian ravioli. But if it does, I'm gonna go steak. I guess I'll go the complete opposite way. Okay, so we have some doozies from our girl Anna. Tyler, just to prepare you for Anna snap judgments. Anna usually sends in some really down the rabbit hole, dark, sometimes tragic snap judgments. Everyone loves them because they go pretty far. All right, so the first one is, what would you rather have happened to you? So these are the options. So the first one is, you're imprisoned for 10 years after accidentally posting a copyrighted song on a podcast, and you are forced at gunpoint to steal uranium in a work release program. So that's your first one. Or would you rather be attacked repeatedly by an owl just because someone's mother doesn't like you? So which one would you pick, Tyler?
The owl, because moms always like me. So
okay.
yeah, I think I'm safe. I'm pretty good. But no, honestly, even if moms didn't like me, the owl, because I don't know, it'd just be something I could at least fight back than having to like carry uranium. But so
yeah, the first one sounds really traumatic, but also the second one reminds me of the Alfred Hitchcock movie, The Birds, when the birds like peck out the eyeballs. I think of the old lady of Jessica Tandy. So I think maybe I'm going to go in prison for 10 years because at least I'll be away from an owl attacking me repeatedly.
One owl. I can fight an owl. It doesn't say a lot of owls. It says
that's true.
An owl. So one owl comes at me, head mask. Like,
so you're fighting for your life is
right.
What you're doing. Okay, all right. That's fair. I think it's more probably likely that I would be imprisoned for accidentally posting a copyrighted song on a podcast. Let's hope that doesn't happen.
That's only if they catch you. I know a lot of podcasts that I'm like, how do you get away with using that music? Oh, I'm like, okay, probably one, they haven't caught you yet, and two, you're not making money off your podcast yet.
Yes.
So they don't want you. So
yeah, so that's the risk you take, I guess. All right, so this is the second snap judgment from Anna. What would have been a more tragic ending? So this is the first option. Right after Kelly saves the alien children from the foster lady, Esme collapses in her arms and slowly disappears, in a symbol by the writers that you can never truly ever save someone. So that's your first option. Or the bomb Orlando was forced to help get supplies for ends up blowing up and killing his brother, and Orlando drowns in grief and sorrow for the rest of his life in prison. So which one of that is the more tragic ending?
I'd say the second one, because it feels more possible. It feels more feasible. Like, I feel like you could, as a writer, you could have got there with this episode. I feel like the Esme one would have been so abrupt that you would have been like, oh my gosh, it's horrible. Then you would have been like, there was no inclination of anything, Yeah. I think with Orlando, it would have, you built both sides of the characters, and with where things had happened, that could have happened. And you could have logically got there, and it would have been more traumatic.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the bomb with Orlando, because Orlando was, just doing something that he was being forced to do. But if he ended up killing his own brother, he would really carry that grief around. And people in the chat, Paula says, Anna went after Esme. And Nicole says, how dare you, Anna? So lots of reactions from the chat about Anna's snap. Okay, so the last one. All right, this is a big one. What is most likely the moral of this episode? If you are going to commit crimes against prisoners, you need to be smarter about it. That's your first choice. Or all owls are evil and need to be executed by Dreamer. Well, that's your second one, I guess. There's three options. So the first one, if you're going to commit crimes against prisoners, you need to be smarter about it. Second one, all owls are evil and need to be executed by Dreamer. Or three, that you cannot be a hero without a suit, and we should just all become vigilantes. What do you think, Tyler, was the moral of this episode, given Anna's choices here?
Based on this episode, I'd say the first one.
Oh, okay. If you're going to commit crimes against prisoners, you need to be smarter about it. That is definitely true.
Using the framing of this episode and how the warden didn't seem like he was very smart because he's on the phone with somebody like they're going to catch us. And he's being bossed around by the henchman. And the fact that William was able to find his bank accounts and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And he was buying expensive. I'm sorry, if I'm like getting a bunch of money, I'm still going to live the same and just kind of stash it somewhere and then retire. And then when no one's looking at me anymore, that's when I'm going to spend it all. So if I'm using the context of the episode, I'm going to go with the first one.
Yeah, that's probably a good choice. I think I'm going to go with the last one, that you cannot be a hero without a suit. We should just all become vigilantes. I think that's what I got out of this. So I think that's going to be my choice for that one. I saw a comment from Rachel here that I wanted to address. She says, we need Anna on the podcast to answer for herself. Stay tuned, Rachel. That's all I'm saying. Stay tuned. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for our Snap Judgments. Thank you for playing along with this silly game that we do here, Tyler, and for providing your answers. And we'll do this outro and we'll come back and wrap up the live stream.
No judgments on your Snap Judgments.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode on the Supergirl Season 6 episode titled Dreamweaver. Thank you, Tyler, for joining me this week and for sharing your thoughts about the episode with me. How can our listeners and viewers find you and the Krypton Report on the internet?
First of all, thank you for having me. It was awesome to get the invitation to come on and do this. I was greatly appreciated and inspired, and I was excited. I was giddy as a school child.
We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yes, of course. Like I said before, I do a Krypton Report podcast. We review anything super related. We do, Superman and Lois as wraps. We finished that, but we do Supergirl comics, everything. So there's always so much to talk about. So basically, at Krypton Report, anywhere on the line, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, we started doing. I officially started doing unboxing videos because those seem to be something kids love. So my kids watch that. So I said, you know what? We're just going to do that. So I have my kids now opening
that's so fun.
my DC figures as videos. And the best one, and I'm just saying this, is my daughter who's 4. My wife bought me the large Darkseid figure.
Oh, the one of him sitting on the throne?
It's the one of him standing from the history lesson in Justice League.
Oh, that's even better.
And my daughter opened it, and I tweeted out, of course. And from a previous conversation, I actually had Ray Porter, the actor who played Darkseid, comment on her video. And that was just really cool because so my 4-year-old loves Darkseid. And so my kids love the villains. My son loves Doomsday. And I'm just like... But yeah, so we started doing that on YouTube and some other things. But yeah, just look for Krypton Report anywhere. You'll find me. I'm usually the one that's responding to all the social media stuff. So, and then there's links to my personal stuff there too. So
that's very cool. Well, there's no shame in liking the villains. Some of my favorite characters are villains, so I appreciate that. All right. Well, I think it's time to get to some DC TV podcast plugs and some Supergirl Radio plugs. We got some of those in there. So we'll play a video and we'll be right back.
If you would like to contact Supergirl Radio, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can call us at 678-718-7252. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Podchaser, and Spotify, where we also have a Spotify playlist that includes music featured on and inspired by the CW's Supergirl TV series. We are listed on DC's fan page, which you can find at dccomics.com/DC-fans. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our Supergirl Radio live streams, make sure to subscribe to the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to get notified when we go live and wired. DC TV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you're in need of new DC TV related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, onesies, mugs, notebooks, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
Supergirl Radio, Superman and Lois Radio, The Flash Podcast, and Legends of Tomorrow Podcast, Black Lightning Podcast, Batwoman Podcast 2, and Titans and Doom Patrol Podcast just for you. Justice League Dark Podcast, Green Lantern Podcast, Stargirl Podcast, Strange Adventures Podcast, and finally my favorite of the bunch, DC TV After Dark, where you're allowed to say fuck.
You can say that on DC TV After Dark. It is that kind of podcast. And speaking of our Supergirl Radio, I guess we weren't talking about our Supergirl Radio Patreon, but now I'm going to talk about our Supergirl Radio Patreon supporters and the Patreon itself. We'd like to thank our Legion of Super sponsors for supporting the Supergirl Radio Patreon. Michael, Sam, Anne-Marie, Grout, Yvonne, Quinn, Jessica, Nicola, Leslie, Susan, Abby Ermgard, Miriam, Cherie, Donna, Nicole, Lizette, Deb, and Ziwi Hung Xiao, and our new Patreon supporter, Anna. So thank you all for all of those ways that you support the podcast. If you would like to become a Supergirl Radio patron, you can go to patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. This is a way to get some extra Supergirl Radio. You'll get your regular dose of free Supergirl Radio episodes every week. But the Patreon is just a little bit extra. You get a little behind the scenes stuff. Sometimes Morgan and I'll talk about our trips. Sometimes you get a little lab cat appearance. Sometimes I'll give you some tutorials about some things that I do with the podcast. So it's just a little bonus material there. So we have 4 monthly levels that you can contribute to. So if you're interested in that, go to patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. We also have our Flat Supergirl contest that we're still doing. So you can go to supergirlradio.com and download our Flat Supergirl image. Just download her, print her out. She's real pretty. She's very heroic with her pose. Just cut her out. Once you print her out, cut her out, and put her on like a popsicle stick or a pen or a pencil, just to give her something to, stand up on. And just go out and take a creative picture with Flat Supergirl. I may take her to Dragon Con this weekend. We'll see what shenanigans she gets up to there. But once you take your picture, post it to social media. Your platform of choice. But just make sure to tag us at Supergirl Radio and use the hashtag Supergirl Adventures. And we're going to be doing this contest until the series finale of Supergirl. So you've got some time. You've got 10 more episodes to contribute. But have some fun with it. We'll do a little giveaway to the winner of the best picture that we choose. So that'll be really fun to see more pictures from Flat Supergirl. She's been all over the place, Flat Supergirl. So it's good to see where she has been hanging out. Well, if you want to follow up with me, you can catch me on Instagram at The Derby Kid. I'm also on YouTube, youtube.com/DuckMilkProd, where I do live streams usually on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern, reading through the Rotten Tomatoes top critic reviews of Batman v Superman. I've been kind of hit and miss this month because I've been doing a lot of traveling, but just check the channel and you'll see when the next one is scheduled. And I am also going to be at Dragon Con this weekend, which is actually happening. I'm so excited about it. I guess I should start with talking about the first panel I'm going to be doing, which is on Saturday, September 4th at 8:30 p.m. It's called Superman Battle Royale of Media Supermen. This is going to be talking about things like who has the best costume, who has the best Superman hair with the S-curl. Those are the real big questions. So we're going to answer those questions at this panel. So if you're going to be at Dragon Con, hit it up Saturday, September 4th at 8:30 p.m. in the Marriott rooms, M302 and 303. Come hang out with us. A friend of the podcast, Michael Bailey, is going to be on that panel with me, and that is going to be a good time. I'm also going to be on a Supergirl panel called Supergirl Final Flight, which is happening Monday, September 6th at 10 a.m. in the same room, actually, Marriott M302 and 303. So if you're going to be at Dragon Con, you want to talk about some Supergirl, come join us. So that should be a good time. I'm going to be recording all of these panels. So in case you can't make it to Atlanta for Dragon Con, you're still going to be with me via audio and maybe video if I feel like doing it that way. So you'll still be able to listen to them regardless. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. But until next time, I am still Rebecca Johnson. That is a person that I still am because that's how I introduced myself at the beginning of the episode. But I'm still Rebecca Johnson. And remember, quote, power can bring out the best in some people and the worst in others. I think the CW are just trying to win the time slot war with Supergirl Radio.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Oh no.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom. Because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. It's so fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.